Silent Hill was probably the best horror game I've ever played, and it's so underappreciated and it needs so much more recognition. So this video I'm going to be talking about why Silent Hill was so amazing and what makes it the masterpiece that no one else seems to be able to understand. Silent Hill challenges guilt and punishment, and not a lot of horror games, or games in particular, talk about this. Not in the same way that Silent Hill does it. Silent Hill is survival horror at its finest. Each of the games have their own specialty. For instance, Silent Hill 4 is very mixed review by the fans, but there's no denying that it's actually quite disturbing from a normal person's standpoint. For the fans, I think it's a little disappointing, but for people like me, I actually really liked it. Number 3 was also a very gory, gritty game. And then there was the second one that was more about narrative than horror. And I think that's why a lot of people in the mainstream audience didn't really like this game as much. I don't own number 2 yet. I played the emulated version on the PC in order to prepare for this review/analysis. The best games, in my opinion, are definitely the second and the third one. The fourth one is okay. It's very different from the Silent Hill series, but I think number 2, the second one, is the best, in my opinion. And I'm going to talk about Silent Hill 2 in this video. Silent Hill 2 is about a man... Silent 2 is about a man called James Sunderland. He's a normal, ordinary character. And he's almost quite dull within the first time you meet him. You kind of go, really? Is this our character? But that makes it all the better when you think about it. Because we get to play someone who's normal. You know, ordinary. There's no specialty in him. He doesn't have, like, you know, fucking Falcon punches or anything like that. You know, he's normal. And that's what makes him relatable. So James gets a letter from his wife. In the letter, her wife called Mary, she tells him to go to Silent Hill, which is a town that they used to go to. Now, from our point of view, we know Silent Hill is a deserted town. And it's been changed ever since Mary's death. Because Mary died from an illness. And James has never gotten over it. And he's been depressed ever since. So then he goes to the place, which is Silent Hill, because of the letter. And he knows that this isn't like made up or fake, because the location is so specific to their relationship. And it shows how much attention and detail that James cares about his wife still. That he's not out sleeping with other women. He still cares about his wife very, very much, and he cannot get over her death. So the narrative is very simple, but yet really intriguing. You know, I want to know I want to know how the wife is still alive. You know, I want to know all about this. And the thing that makes it all the better is that it's a horror game. And I love horror games, especially survival horror. They're amazing. Now, I talked about how the lack of horror, or, you know, this narrative over horror is a bit of a issue with how the game was preceded. You know, how it was very underappreciated. And I feel like people like that are retarded, because this game is actually quite scary still. It's not jump scares, you know, like Five Nights at Freddy's or any of that shit. But it's still quite eerie and atmospheric and just bizarre. It's very empty. The soundtrack in this game is different from the previous games and the sequels, because it's very, you know, it's very like one-noted, you know, it's very subtle, but you know it's there. And it's kind of a symbolism of James's emptiness because of his loss of his wife. That's really interesting. This game is a lot more detailed than you think. And I think a lot of people overthink Silent Hill. They really do. I think a lot of people overthink, how do you get into Silent Hill? How does it work? Do you die and then go into Silent Hill like in the movies? No, fuck the movies. People overthink that way, way too much. You need to look at Silent Hill as a story. You need to look at it from a narrative standpoint. The game's narrative standpoint is guilt. That's the whole reasoning behind Silent Hill. Silent Hill is like a town that everyone goes to if they still have guilt within inside them. And he's trying to find his wife. So there's some kind of guilt there because he feels like he's guilty for her death. You know, he still feels guilty, but for reasons unknown as of this point. But from our point of view, we go, well, you can tell he feels guilty because his wife is dead, and he still cares about her, and he can't get over her death. Maybe this place will help him get over that death. But the thing is, Silent Hill is a horror game. You get punished for your guilt. And that's exactly why this game is scary. Because there are things in the game that symbolizes a lot of things to do with your wife. And it makes you feel even more guilty, making you just dread with it. Almost to the point where if you're filled with so much guilt, you're just gonna eventually accept it. And maybe that's what Silent Hill was trying to do to him. Try and allow him to accept it by overfilling himself with guilt. So all the monsters in this game are very feminized. You know, they got a very woman-like body, and a lot of it is symbolism to your wife when she was ill. For instance, there's monsters that throw up on you aggressively, almost like Mary, his wife that died 3 years ago. Her illness, the thing coming out of them is the illness, but it's coming out in such a, you know, aggressive, fast, exaggerated way that helps us give us more backstory towards James and Mary. Maybe their relationship wasn't so peaceful after all. Maybe there was a bit of hatred in there, that they didn't really like each other during this whole illness. The controls are very different to any other game. You know, you got this like 3D mode in which when you move, it's all a camera piece, you know, it's a camera shot that you're seeing, each of them differently. Sometimes it's following you, panning around you, but a lot of them's just a shot and your character walking. And I love this, because I love movies, and there's so much story behind every shot. You know, there's shots that help you see a puzzle or an item that you need to pick up, and it's so specific, and it helps with future scares. You know, you pick up something and boom! And that's what makes this game scary as well, is that it's very unpredictable with its camera shots. And this is a very easy and very useful and unique game style. It takes some time to get used to, because you'll walk and you'll go, oh, nope, nope, you know, and you'll get confused, but you get a hold of it really quickly, and it's such an easy and useful technique. Let's talk about the battles in this game, because I feel like that's the only real issue with this game, is that the fights and whatnot are not good. You know, it's pretty easy, you just mash a button and you go. You know, it's kind of silly in a way, but it's there for a reason. And the thing is, the violence and the fighting in this game is not the essential reason why this game is so good. It's actually one of the least reasons why you would want to play this game. You know, horror games are not all about fighting. It's almost like a last resort thing, so that's why they didn't put as much effort into the combat in this game, because it's not really needed. So as a horror game, a survival horror, is it good? Yes. There's a lot of puzzles. You don't get given a lot of things to help you proceed in the game. It's very you know, you don't get your hand held throughout this whole game. That's actually a negative for me personally, is that a lot of this game you have to do by yourself, and that kind of annoyed me, because I'm sitting there like, oh, for fuck's sake, what do I do now? So I had to Google a few things in order to get past areas, but overall it just makes the ending more satisfying. You're like, okay, I search things, this better be a good ending, and it is. So the violence and the horror, does it make it a good survival horror game? Yes. You're very limited to ammo supply and health supplies. You have to proceed that very well. And also the horror aspects of this game are pretty scary. They are very scary, because there are times where you don't expect it the most. For instance, in the toilet scene, you knock on all the doors, no reply, nothing, and just as you're about to leave, and it startled me to death. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I would not expect out of the entire game that this is where I'd get scared. So I knocked again, no reply. And most horror games that have jump scares, like Five Nights at Freddy's, they're there for a second and you're scared and that's it. This game, that toilet scene, when I left that room afterwards, I was thinking, wait, was someone watching me the whole time? Did they not want me to know they were in there? But they fucked up and slipped? There's so many things that you think about after that room, and that's why the horror in this game is so genuine and scary. Because it makes you think. You know, it's not a game where you play with your buddies and go, oh, okay, let's fucking drink beers and, you know, you get scared. It's a very thought-provoking horror game that you can play alone or with another person. I don't really recommend playing this with more than 2 people, otherwise it kind of ruins the atmosphere and, You know, you got to talk to a lot of people at this game because there's a lot of things to talk about in the game. And also the other horror aspect of this game is that it's not a physical thing that you can get away from. It's a mental thing. He's scared about himself because he's crazy, you know. This is all happening within his mind. For example, Jack from The Shining, you know, it's not the house, it's not the environment that's haunted, it's him. It's his mind. And trying to face your own mind in a battle like this is impossible. And it's incredibly hard to escape from your own mind. That's why you have to fight it. And that's what makes it so scary. Is that you can't just run away from it, you have to fight it.
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
So, this is where the spoilers kind of fill in a bit for the game. But trust me, you're gonna still want to play this game afterwards. So James goes into Silent Hill in order to face his guilt, because he knows that, spoiler, he killed his wife. Him going to Silent Hill was an invitation for his own punishment, and he tries so hard to accept, even though he doesn't want to believe it. I mean, imagine trying to accept the fact that you killed your own wife. That's horrible. And you can see this throughout the game. There's symbolism everywhere, such as Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head is a physical form of James's aggression towards Mary. A big, masculine, disgusting, rapish. I'm not saying James raped anyone, or is that a symbolism? And violence towards all the other monsters in the game. There's a scene where it looks like the Pyramid Head is raping and attacking the feminized creature, which is very symbolic for James and Mary's relationship. Towards the end of the game, the two Pyramid Heads in the entire game kill themselves. Because James has finally allowed all that guilt and he's accepted it. He tries so hard to accept it, but he just doesn't want to believe it, and this part of the game is where he finally accepts it. So whilst you're in the town of Silent Hill, you actually meet some other interesting characters that are kind of going through the same thing as you, but in a different way. You know that they're dealing with their own problems because they're in the same town as you, and as we've established already, this town is all about dealing with guilt or something that you haven't been able to accept or forgotten yet. For instance, Angela is trying to find her mother because she is guilty of killing her own father because he was raping and abusing her. This is pretty apparent as you can see the lack of confidence and fear towards you as a character.
I mean my mother. I'm sorry. It's not your problem.
She doesn't want anyone to have a reason to attack her or harm her, so she tries to be as nice as possible. You know, constantly saying, I'm sorry, you know, the town's over here. You know, she just wants to be left alone so that no one can harm her. Then we meet Eddie. Eddie is a kid who was bullied and doesn't care about the lives of the people that put hatred towards him. This made him very conscious of his own weight and appearance. As you can tell throughout the game that he eats pizza.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
And all of this made him go crazy to the point where he kills probably one of the bullies.
Killing a person ain't no big deal. Just put the gun to their head, pow!
So he's in Silent Hill for that reason. Then there's Maria, who's possibly the most interesting out of them all, who is someone who looks almost identical to your wife. And I think there's a pretty good reason why. She has two main personalities, a flirty girl with nothing to lose, to then an aggressive, harassing lady. I think this is because Maria is some sort of monster in Silent Hill, rather than a normal person. She's there to test James on how he interacts with Mary now, if she was here.
All I want from you is an answer.
It doesn't matter who I am. I'm here for you, James. See? I'm real.
I believe this because she's exaggerating everything that you see symbolized in the game. The fact that James killed his wife because she was always barfing and always trying to go at him. So that's where the exaggerated aggression characteristic comes with Maria. So Maria's character always exaggerates Mary's characteristics to James, just to test him. The ending of the game allows you to accept everything that's happened. you finally get to see Mary again. And it's a real relief when you do. You know, you kind of sit there going, all throughout this game, and now this is where we are.
James.
Forgive me.
I told you that I wanted to die, James. I wanted the pain to end.
That's why I did it, honey. I just couldn't watch you suffer.
And it feels so satisfying, and I just think this is such an underappreciated masterpiece, for sure. So, what would I give Silent Hill out of 10 if I had to rate this game? Definitely a 9. There's a few issues, such as the gameplay style, and the fact that you get no help, almost no help whatsoever. And there's a few backtracking parts, but other than that, this game is really solid, and it's well deserved. Definitely check it out if you haven't. It is a masterpiece. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.